Hi guys, so welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about my education experience and how, yes, I'm a teacher. So a lot of you guys know me from Instagram and you kind of only see that side, but aside from my online life, physically, I am a teacher, and I thought that I would kind of answer a bunch of education questions since I get a lot of DMs quite often just about personal stuff and about like maybe some advice. So this is kind of my video to try to encompass that and try to help as much as I can, because I know a lot of you guys are at that point where you're contemplating your career or maybe changing your career. So I think that it's a really good opportunity to have this discussion and kind of open up the opportunity to have more questions if there are. First off, I think that I should just kind of talk about my education journey and how I got to be where I am to this day. Growing up, I never really knew what I wanted to do until grade 10. They started asking you to, there's this program, starts with this CAP. I don't even know if they have that anymore, but basically you just learn like the babyest amount of like financial planning. Not really, you don't really, not the extent that you probably should for the real world. Basically telling you to plan for the future. And it just kind of hit me that I had no clue what I wanted to do. And I have friends that are, my grade group in general is incredibly smart, and they're all fantastic, independent girls that just seemed like they got it all, and everybody looked like they just knew exactly what they wanted to do. And I just kind of sat there and I was like, I have no clue. So I just kind of thought about the characteristics and qualities and things that I kind of gravitate towards, and that was kind of my starting base. So when I had to really start making some serious decisions about where I wanted to go in my life, I realized that writing and kind of just like coming up with puns or those kind of things, that kind of came more naturally to me. So I knew that was where I wanted to go when I did my undergrad. So I graduated from UBC with my Bachelor of Arts in English Literature, and I realized that's kind of a good base, but I need to build on top of that. So in fourth year, just before I graduated, I was thinking about kind of career options and where I wanted to go. And so I had two paths. I wanted to do like advertising and marketing or become a lawyer. So those were my two options. I ended up taking the SATs and doing all that stuff and taking a couple classes, but I realized that I didn't have that passion, and that wasn't really something I could see myself doing for long term. And I think that it's really important to kind of test different careers out, because I worked at an office, I worked for the government for a couple of terms, so like short-term jobs, and then I realized that an office job wasn't really what I wanted to do either. So it kind of just helped me inform my decision making. And then I always knew that I loved helping people, and all throughout my high school and university life, I've always volunteered. And that's something that I've always done. I've always volunteered and coached. And I knew that was something that came naturally to me. So I was thinking that would be a really good career to kind of pursue. So I started looking into opportunities that had to do with using those skills. And obviously, teaching is pretty much one of them. So I applied to do my B.Ed also at UBC, and I went straight into it right after my BA. So that's kind of my backstory. I went basically elementary school, high school, university, and then now I teach at schools. So I've been living in schools for like pretty much my entire life, ever since I was like 3. A lot of people kept asking what was the kind of like why, what was the why behind why you became a teacher? And I think that's a really important one, because as I've said before, obviously I really like helping people, and that's kind of a determining factor. I think if you don't really like helping people, or if that's something you get like impatient with, I don't really think that would be the career to choose for you to choose, because you're basically spending your whole day, every single day, even the minutes that you're not even at the school, you're basically just coming up with ways to help somebody else other than yourself. So I think that's where I would start off with. Ask yourself, do you like helping people? And you can be honest. Like, I don't think it's a selfish question to ask. Just like, do you see yourself doing it long term? Because it's something that it's demanding. You don't really get credit for it, and sometimes some people will not be happy. And I don't think that's a problem. That's just something that you just got to be honest with yourself about. I also was always really thankful for the teachers and the coaches that I had in my life, and that was probably the biggest determining factor. When I had to write my personal statement for like, why do you want to be a teacher? I didn't really write about teachers. I wrote about my coaches. So some of my coaches actually ended up being teachers in my life, but I just kind of thought about how much they helped me in like different vulnerable times in my life, and if they weren't there, I'd probably become a different person. So I just kind of, it was like my personal statement was like an ode to my coaches, and as a thank you for everything that they have done for me. So saying before, basketball, I grew up playing basketball, grew up playing sports, doing all that, and I think that sports in general really kind of saved me and shaped me to become the person that I am today. Because without that, I wouldn't have the self-discipline. I wouldn't have had like different experiences, because like I grew up pretty lucky and kind of sheltered. So it's not like I had lots of practical examples of problem solving in real life, because it was just something I never really had to do. But in basketball, you have to learn how to go with the flow. You have to learn work ethic. You have to do all those things that aren't necessarily taught in schools. And for that, I had plenty of experience. So I think the reason why I became a teacher is definitely because of my coaches and what they did for me. I felt kind of like a social, personal responsibility to kind of do that for somebody else, or at least hope to do that for somebody else. It's not a guarantee. Like, you don't really know what people are going to take from you. So I guess, yeah, it was just kind of like throwing it back into the universe, a big thank you for everything that people had done for me and didn't have to. So I think that's kind of the big backstory of how I got to where I am, and basically the big question of why I became a teacher. Okay, so for this part, I'm going to move into some of the questions that people have asked me, and they're very specific questions, and I should have probably put them in order that's a bit more chronological, but I'm just pretty much going to fire it out with... Okay, let's start with this one. What's your teaching philosophy? So I think my teaching philosophy is I used to have like a big, like in the beginning of the year, you give your syllabus or your kind of like shape of the year to the parents of your classroom. And I always had like a big blurb at the top, but now that it's not in front of me, I can't quite remember. But basically, my teaching philosophy is to create a classroom that is, first of all, safe. Because a lot of the time you think, obviously, it's a classroom, it's academics, your child has to learn. But your child will not learn if they don't feel safe and if they don't feel comfortable, because when you're learning, you have to take risks, because you're growing, you're changing, you're growing your mind. You have to have those opportunities to take risks, but you also have to have that feeling of safety. And if you don't have that feeling of safety, it's really hard to grow. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but basically the number one thing in my classroom is always safety. The next is to teach the child about, first of all, themselves and how they learn what works best for them and grow that independence. And with that independence, help them learn all the academics and all the foundational skills that they need in math and writing and social studies, everything, because everything kind of works together. So ultimately you're teaching the whole child, not just their brain. So that's kind of my philosophy, I guess, if you were to put it down. But basically it all comes down to creating a safe and happy classroom, which is pretty basic words, but that's exactly kind of where I'm at would you consider mentoring girls to be more confident? I would like to think that I do that without becoming like an official mentor, I guess. But as a teacher, and especially as like a younger teacher in a classroom, it's kind of easier to identify or to relate. It's a little bit easier to relate with kids. And even though I haven't really taught older kids, I've coached them and stuff like that. That's what I've done. But I hope that I am a good example. Oh my god, example of a strong female person in their lives. Whether and I feel like that's the same for both guys and girls. Like when it's a co-ed school, so like there's boys and girls. It's not like I'm just teaching girls, but I think that it's important for boys to see a woman in their life that isn't just their mom, someone that's separate, but also somebody that's like independent, somebody that is not a pushover. And I think it's important for everybody, anybody, to see that, because I want them to know that they can grow up to be whatever they want to be. So I guess I would consider mentoring girls to be more confident, because I think that's something that I still struggle with. And so I find it kind of, not therapeutic, but just kind of like, it's helpful for me, because the things that I say to them, because I believe in like my kids so much. So if I believe in them and they're like willing to take risks, I'm kind of like in awe of their courage. So in turn, what I say to them helps me. So it's kind of like a circle that keeps coming back. It's a good reminder, because sometimes, especially in the beginning, because I would get so nervous teaching, like you're talking to like little kids, but still you have so much power in their life, and I was terrified of doing something wrong. And so I really had to grow that confidence, and basically I told myself, fake it till you make it, which is like probably not the best thing to tell everybody that I did, but basically I had to fake my confidence because I didn't have any in the beginning. I was terrified of them, terrified in the beginning, so scared. But it pays off, it's worth it, because it wasn't like the kids that I was afraid of, it was just myself. I was scared of messing up and not being the perfect teacher, I guess. Especially when you're starting out, it's a bit nerve-wracking. Anything we probably don't know about the industry, about the education industry, that we should? Okay. I think that yes, teachers do have it hard, because it's not like the highest paying job, and you're not just giving up your time, you're giving up yourself. And I think that is probably something that you should know about the education industry. And even though sometimes you hear like negative stuff, like, oh, this person's so tired, my job sucks, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. There are so many things that are so uplifting. And now that I'm not teaching, because I'm taking a year off, I don't know, I miss it. I miss it all the time. And all those little things that I thought were so tedious, I actually miss it. And I miss those funny little encounters and those little moments that you just don't really get with adults. Silly things that they would say, all the things they would do. There are so many joys in teaching, and I think that it's so important to remember that, because when I was like in the moment teaching every day for the past like 5 years, I was like, I could not wait to stop. But here I am taking that sabbatical, and all I can think about is how much I miss it. So I think that while you're in those moments, while you're in those trenches of like hating teaching for whatever reason, just kind of throw yourself back to why you're teaching and little moments that you're thankful for. So I guess that's kind of what I would say, because it is really tiring, like without a doubt. You exhaust yourself. You basically light yourself on fire to give warmth to other people. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you're really into it, it's going to be the career for you. Did you ever want to give up teaching and try another career? Yes, because like even now, like as I think about, I'm only 28. I'm 28, but like I know that teaching isn't something that I'm going to do forever, because it's easy to exhaust yourself when you don't have kids. But when I have kids of my own and I want to be involved in their life, I don't want to have to, I don't know, I just don't want to have to not be there for them. Like I want to be able to mentally be there, physically be there, emotionally be there, and not be exhausted. Because when I come home from work, I'm tired and I need that time off and break. But when I have kids, then I want to be there in their lives and witness all their little moments. And so I think, yeah, I do contemplate other careers, but I ultimately know that it will have to do with education somehow. What program did you do at UBC? So I was in a cohort called TEL PBL, and it stood for Teaching English Language Learners Through Problem-Based Learning. TEL PBL. And I know for a fact that they've changed it. They changed it the year after I left into something else, like triple C or triple C to the power of 3. I don't know what it's called anymore. But basically, it's just problem-based learning. In my opinion, it's the best cohort to be in. It's so cool because it's so relevant to how, so it is really relevant to how education is done these days. So we do project-based learning, problem-based learning, where you're not just, it's more about cooperation and working together as a team rather than as an individual, because those are the skills that people are trying to hone in on these days. And I think, in my opinion, just a little bit biased, but it's the best cohort. So if you're contemplating which cohort to do, the one that is most similar to TEL PBL. I don't know the name of it anymore, but that's the one to do for sure. Okay, this one's kind of similar because these two kind of work hand in hand. Can you give a rundown of a typical day at work and how many hours do you work in a week, including any work you do at home? Okay, so a typical day at work for teaching would be, so I used to I would be in my classroom at 7:30 in the morning. And I loved that time because nobody else was really at work, and I could get all my photocopying done, I could do marking, and I could just have that time to settle and chill in my classroom with my coffee, with my breakfast, and just tidy things up, get things how I wanted it to before the kids come flying in. And I really appreciated that time because for me, I am somebody that I don't like being like frazzled, and I like being early. I like setting up my own time and having my own space and not having to worry about that. So that's why I'd come in early, get all my prep done for the day, make sure everything is ready to go so that I don't have to spend my day worrying or rushing or being frantic, because I like being prepared. I had to make sure that my day was ready to go when the bell went and the kids were in the classroom. Then you teach all the way till the end of school, and depending on the season, there would be, I coach I coach one sport every term, so it'd be cross country, basketball, and track. So I'd always have practice after school, or sometimes in the morning, depending on if it was basketball practice in the morning, or sometimes after school. It just depends. So for those days, I would have to make sure that everything was ready the night before. That would kind of be my pattern. And then I guess in terms of hours and how many hours you worked a week, I don't really know how many hours I would work a week, but basically I would work from 7:30 in the morning till 4:30 is when I'm finished coaching, or 5 o'clock depending on the grade level. And then sometimes afterwards I would still do work, because one of my biggest things is that I hate bringing home my work. I just don't do it. So I would do all my marking, and then sometimes I'd stay at work till 6 o'clock or so and then go home. So 5:30, 6 o'clock, go home. That sounds like a pretty average day, but 7:30 till 5:30 or 6. Basically, that's my hours. But the good thing is that if I met up with people for dinner, or if I went home, I would not be thinking about work because I would have everything done. So that's kind of my typical day, because I do not enjoy bringing work home with me. Like, for me, that is where I chill and I just get to relax and I get to be an absolute potato. So that was just kind of my rule. Don't bring work home. And I was just lucky because I had the privilege to do that, right? Like, if I had kids, it's a different story. So that's why I have certain feelings about how my life will look in the future. Let's see. Oh, okay, so this one is one that I actually wanted to talk about for sure. So it says, my parents keep persuading me to take education as a course in college, but it isn't my passion. Help. I think if it's not your passion, like, it's not, then you don't have to pursue it. But since it is just a course, it's not the program, I don't think there's a problem with taking courses in education, because what I've realized is that through the education classes, it's made me a better leader, and these leadership qualities are exactly what business people are looking for. And so it's kind of like very useful training for any kind of job that you're going to have, because as a teacher, you have to lead a classroom and you have to be that alpha, that person in charge. So if it's just a course, I don't see the harm in it unless it doesn't boost your GPA or anything like that. I'm sure there's different complications, but that's just kind of my thing. It's probably not the career you would want to go in, but if it's just a course, I think it's a good idea just to kind of see what kind of takeaways you can get from it, because it doesn't hurt. Okay, what is the best part about being a teacher? For me, the best part about being a teacher is definitely building that relationship with the kid and their family. Like, there are some kids that I've taught, I still keep in touch with their families, and it's just really nice to know that you're not just like a person that they meet for a year and then it's like, okay, thank you, goodbye, done. It's nice to know that you've actually done something that in their life, or tried to at least, and they still kind of want to keep in contact with you, because I think the relationship building is super important, and just as long as the kid knows that you're there for them no matter what, I think that's the best part of being a teacher. Also, some of the things the kids say are just the funniest things. I used to send texts to Tommy of just like, if something happened, I'd try to write it down in my notes on my phone or my computer, and I'd just be like, this is ridiculous. Like, some of the things the kids have said are just so funny, especially when I was teaching kindergarten. Hilarious. Like, one of my favorite stories is in kindergarten. So I started teaching kindergarten when I was, 24. So like a lot younger, like looking. And so some of the kids just kind of saw me as their friend. And one of them was like, can I call my mom? And I said, oh, are you okay? Like, is there something wrong? Like, is there a reason why you need to use the phone? And he goes, yes, I want to call my mom because I want to set up a play date with you. And I was like, sorry, with who? I want to call my mom to set up a play date with you. And I was like, oh. I was like, but we have a play date every day. So it's just kind of funny. Like, you can't make this stuff up. Like, it killed me. Like, to this day, it just sits in this little tiny place in my heart. And I'm just like, so precious. So precious. Another story I have about teaching is, there's one time I just was having a moment and I ended up like bursting into tears in class. And, sorry, I didn't burst into tears. They were doing their own thing and I was just crying silently in the back by myself. And one of the kids noticed, and so she wrote this little note on the whiteboard. I still have it. If I can find it, I'll find a picture, but basically it was just like, making, like, you're the best teacher, whatever, ever, but you've got your own little section in my heart. I literally just cried even harder because it was just probably the sweetest thing ever. And I think just remembering, and what I love about teaching is that, like, kids are so innocent and just so pure. And so when they do something like that, it just reminds you that there is still good in the world. And like, I learn from kids all the time. I know that I'm the teacher, I'm supposed to be the one that's teaching, but for a fact, definitely, some of these kids just bring me back down to earth and remind me of the good things in the world, especially when I'm having a bad day. They're just so sweet, and like, they really know how to make it. Like, they're not faking it. They're not there yet. So yeah, so what's the best part of being a teacher? All those reasons. Those are the best parts of being a teacher. Okay, how do you get your kids to behave? I think it comes down to how much of a relationship you have with your kids. I know that for some people, the fear factor really, really helps, but that's not, well, I hope you realize that's not how I live my life. Like, I don't want people to be scared of me. I don't think that's useful. And so instead, like, I'd rather them trust me and follow through on my expectations. And I think that's one thing that I think is really important. You have to have clear expectations set out from the beginning, or else your kids don't know what is good or bad behavior. Like, if you're not clear, how are they supposed to know? How are they supposed to guess what's in your brain? So having those conversations at the very start of the year, especially important. Having it laid out, especially important. And making sure that you're consistent with, like, your, I'm absolutely blanking on the word, but basically if they mess up, there are consequences, and you have to be consistent and consistent with it. Consistent but fair. You know, like, follow through. That's just kind of the basics. So if they know what it means to misbehave, lay it out for them so they don't. And then if they do, make sure you follow up and don't just be all talk. But for the most part, I will say that, like, I didn't really have kids that misbehaved. And I think that's important to clarify, because sometimes kids make mistakes because they just don't know. And I know that sounds like I'm going backwards on the follow through with your actions thing. Like, I always definitely did. Like, if they definitely messed up, I'd be like, hey, gotta break it to you, you messed up, and I know you did. And even though you are, like, apologizing and being all that, I still have to lay it down on you. Just don't do it again. And they understand. Like, they're gonna take it because they know. It's not like, oh my gosh, you just threw this upon me, I had no idea. They know. So when kids mess up and they know what's gonna happen. If they made a mistake, you have to explain it to them. It might take a while for them to get it, but you have to be like, this is the reason why, and because of this is what's gonna happen. They understand. So most of the time I didn't have to. I had pretty, like, I was really quite lucky. I had really sweet kids, but, like, there will come a time when it happens, and yeah, just be honest, lay it out. Don't make a huge deal out of it, but make enough of a deal that they know that it's wrong. Another question is, where do I start teaching my 5-year-old to read and like letters? He hates it. It's tough because some kids, like, it's something that some kids just, like, get right away, and some kids just really are like, oh my god, detesting it. So I think the best thing is to try to make academics into games, especially when the kids are younger. So when I did kindergarten, there were some kids that were struggling to read and remember their alphabets. And so, for example, one kid really likes sports. So I would take, sorry, I'm gonna put this here. I would take some cones and laminate some letters. One time I used chalk. Let's just pretend chalk, because no one's gonna have a laminator at home. So if there is a wall outside your house or a garage door, write little letters in chalk and take a soccer ball and you say, kick it to the letter blah, and they have to kick it at the right one. So then it kind of involves like your physical activity, so it's kinesthetic learning, but also they're doing their academics because it's letters and it's something that they probably struggle with. Another part that's really important if they're struggling with recall is repetition. So that's kind of what I would do. It's just kind of like putting the element of games and fun and repetition. So of course, there's only so much space on your garage door. It's not like you're gonna have like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's also really important to mix up the letters. So you could have maybe the vowels to start off with, or the more common letters that are used, like S, A, those, whatever, sat, cat, mat. Be like, okay, kick the ball at cat, and they have to know which one it is. So I think that's really important to just kind of throw in some fun with it. So I definitely wanted to make this video a little bit longer, but my battery is like flashing at me and it's telling me that it's time to end this. So as always, if there are any questions that you have about specific instances, I'm more than happy to help. Just kind of hit me up with a DM and hopefully I see it. Maybe every couple weeks or so I'll do some education questions like this and just do a response on my Instagram. But for the most part, I feel like we've covered the basics of the why and reasons of why I wanted to become a teacher. Yeah, so hopefully that was helpful for you guys. I know some of you guys are kind of wondering if you want to head down this path. It's a very fulfilling job, but at the same time, even though it's so fulfilling, it does exhaust you. So just prepare yourself. For me, I love it, and I think that it's one of the most amazing experiences ever. And as a kid, I definitely didn't appreciate my teachers enough, but I don't think that's why teachers do it. Teachers don't do it to be like loved and appreciated. Teachers do it because they care about you, your kids, the future. So I think that's a big reason. Big ups to teachers. Basically patting myself on the back, but right now I'm not one. So I think it's really important to email your kids' teachers right now, especially during this pandemic. They're working their butts off and they're sacrificing time with their own families to basically be there for a whole bunch of other families. So during this time, teachers, you are killing it. All my friends, because like I've heard their stories, e-learning is hard. So they're having to navigate the waters for the first time. It's not like there's like a protocol. So really thank you to teachers. I'm not doing it right now, but I can see how it can be exhausting, how it can be hard, and I think that it's super important to always be appreciative of kind of all the people that are doing so much in the world, not just teachers. I know it's not just teachers, but everybody's doing their part right now, even though, because this is a thing about teachers, that's why I'm saying it. I know I'm rambling, but at the end of the day, thank you, teachers. All right, so hopefully this was helpful for you guys. If you guys want to see more videos, you guys can click to subscribe. I'm gonna be doing one new video every week. So that's the plan. That's the course of action, just to keep myself entertained, keep you entertained, and just help out as much as I can. All right,